bit this afternoon. It always amazes me when you look at a rider like Igor Gonzalez de Galdeano. His position on the machine doesn't really indicate the amount of power this man is developing right now, because to put it into technical terms, he is probably producing around about 500 watts of energy right now.
Well, he's going to have to keep that energy coming out, because Manolo Sainz behind him is never going to let this man relax for the next hour of cycling. And we'll know at the end just who is the leader, I think, of the ONCE team for the remainder of this race. Everybody is underway, and the pace is still being set at the finish by David Miller. We'll take a break. And welcome back. We're looking here at Gonzalez de Galdeano, but I can now bring you up to date. And it's not great reading for the supporters of the Spanish, because Aitor Gonzalez down 55 seconds on David Miller at the 14-kilometre check. In itself, not so important, but he's 10 seconds slower than Dario Frigo and Valverde. But he is 11 seconds quicker than Rasmussen. Those riders all through at 14 kilometres. We're waiting now for the arrival of Roberto Heras at that same point, and then we'll follow Gonzalez de Galdeano, Beltran Gonzalez de Galdeano and Nozell. But I expected a quicker time there than that for Aitor Gonzalez.
I'm very surprised. I thought he would be very close to the time of Mola and Miller at that point there, because those are the times that you need to be looking at. This is the time difference here between Nozell and Igor Gonzalez de Galdeano. They're actually giving a slight advantage to Nozell of 16 seconds over his teammate on the right-hand side of the screen, Igor Gonzalez de Galdeano. He doesn't look to be suffering at all right now, and I think what's going to tell in this individual time trial is the last 10 or 15 kilometres, because as I said earlier on, the first 25 kilometres, Phil, are with a cross tailwind and pushing the riders up to speeds of approaching 60 kilometres an hour, and it's the man who's got the most left in his legs in the last half an hour of racing who can really create the big time differences.
Well, that's interesting, Bob. Nozell again throwing one over his teammate here, Gonzalez de Galdeano.
Well, de Galdeano, a very good time trialist. He has to put everything into this race, and in the first 5 kilometers, Nozell has already taken 16 seconds out of him. This man is absolutely flying down the road. He looks perfect on the bike. He's not straining. He looked to me a little bit nervous in the start blocks, not 100% confident, but he's looked so comfortable on the podiums. I think that Nozell is in for a good chance today. Yesterday I said he was going to win. He's on a good ride so far.
Well, Heras has gone through at 14 kilometres. Now, that is a surprise. 31 seconds, better than all of the major challengers here.
Heras better than Aitor Gonzalez, better than Dario Frigo. This is a phenomenal ride that Roberto Heras is doing right now. Obviously, the team are on a roll after the superb tactical move they made yesterday, giving themselves a minute advantage over the time trial specialists.
So Heras then finding some great time trialing ability today, and good for him, because this is the day to do it. Indeed it is. Now, don't forget, if you want to spend a little while in a corral with a bull and try and stay on its back for 8 seconds, then watch our program PBR. This is really a most difficult thing to do. The top cowboys in the world can do it though, and you can watch it every Saturday and Sunday. Our program PBR starting at 8 p.m. Eastern and Pacific time on OLN, of course. Well, we're looking at Roberto Heras. I'm sure he has had the news conveyed to him, Bob, that he is on the prospects of a great ride today.
And this is a great ride by Roberto Heras. We'll have to see how a tricky Beltran, his teammate, is doing in just a few minutes' time. He'll come through if he is on the pace that Heras. They're both doing very good. It's great to see Heras do a good time trial so far on a flat stage. And that means that U.S. Postal is not giving up. And also, if there's still some crosswinds that blow and they catch Nozell or de Galdeano in moments of inattention, they could do what they did yesterday to the Kelme rider Valverde and the 2 Fassa Bortolo stars, Frigo and Aitor Gonzalez. So U.S. Postal hasn't given up at all, and Roberto Heras is justifying those efforts that his teammates put out on the road and doing a great individual time trial so far.
A nice study of his position here as well, because compared to the time trialists like Igor Gonzalez de Galdeano or Nozell, you can see he sits up quite a lot on his machine. He can't really get down into that very aggressive aerodynamic position that riders like Armstrong and Jan Ullrich can get down into, and that really does help you cut into the wind that little bit more. But he's using a lot of power here right now. He's taking advantage of the southeasterly wind to push himself up to rivaling the top men in this specialist. You can see on the left hand side there, in fact, Nozell is extending his lead over his teammate Igor Gonzalez de Galdeano. He's in fact pedaling at a much higher cadence. keeping up nice and fast, and this really is turning out to be one for the books here, because Nozal was certainly not a fancied rider before the Vuelta a Espana, but I think he could in fact cause the real surprise, just like in 1991 Melchor Mauri did for the Once team.
Well, the next interesting check will be the arrival at Manuel Beltran at that first check of the day. But at the moment, Heras has gone through best of the favourites. 6th place at the moment, 31 seconds slower than Klaus Moeller, who was the best time at this point. Moving out down the road a little bit. This is looking, it might be Aitor Osa here, as we're coming up to Unai Osa, I beg your pardon, as they come up to the check at 27 kilometres. And pretty regular ride by Osa as he goes through there in 42nd place. Well, he's just doing what we expected of him, really. The big battle between the two teammates for supremacy of the Once squad, head-to-head on the highways here. That is the 14-kilometre check, and that is the latest situation. And Gonzalez de Galdeano has gone through in 5th place at 25 seconds, and we haven't got Beltran's time yet.
Yeah, but what I find quite interesting is, in fact, Igor Gonzalez de Galdeano at this point has only gone through 6 seconds faster than Roberto Heras. That really goes to show what a great ride Roberto Heras is doing in this individual time trial today. He knows he needs to do something outstanding if he wants to keep any hope of winning the Vuelta a España for the second time, because let's not forget, if he can keep up with these men as we go into the next big mountain top finishes, this bike race finishes with a very serious uphill mountain bike time trial to finish with.
And that could turn out to be the most crucial day of the Tour. It could all go down now, the way this race is going, to that final 12-kilometre mountain time trial. Nozal, don't forget, according to the GPS system, is ahead of Gonzalez de Galdeano. So he could well be coming through on the best time, or just behind David Miller at the moment, if he continues, presuming that Gonzalez de Galdeano's time having set the trend there. Well, the race leader again inspired by the Golden Fleece and knows that he's closing down the race today. Let's have a look at this. 25 seconds, Gonzalez Gada, Nozal through in 5 seconds only off Mola, and quicker than David Miller yet again. Miller got quicker. I wonder if Nozal will. He's confirmed now, 20 seconds up on his teammate. This man is unbelievable. We'll take a break. And welcome back as we look here at the race leader of the Vuelta a España, and if he keeps up this pace in the individual time trial, he will be an even clearer race leader, because of all the fancied men, he has got the best time through the first check at 14 kilometres. We're a little bit disturbed by the fact we can't give you the time of Manuel Beltran. For some reason it's not coming up on the computer, although we have seen Beltran down there, so he hasn't had a problem and he looks as though he's going okay.
He has looked pretty good out on the course. We're looking at the 27-kilometre time check here, and Dario Frigo, after a very slow start, seems to have picked up in the middle part of the course. As you can see, just look at those flags here. This is the early part of the course. The first 25 kilometres are almost a block tailwind, pushing riders up to speeds well in excess of 50 kilometres an hour average, and this is the time of Dario Frigo. Obviously a very slow start for him. He comes through there in 21st place, a minute and 30 seconds down on the time set there by Klaus Moeller.
Yes, and he was losing time, beginning to lose time there to David Miller, and 32.32, that set the trend. Gonzalez has gone through ahead of him, but we haven't yet got his time. Nozal, however, is the man blazing a trail.
Well, signs of life from Frigo on the slopes up to the climb, the finishing climb in Andorra. Sprinted for the stage win from the front group, barely lost out to Alejandro Valverde, who won the stage for the Kelme team. I thought we would see a revival of the Fassa Bortolo fortunes, because Aitor Gonzalez also was very aggressive, but then yesterday they seemed to lose the plot entirely, wound up a minute behind the front group containing this man de Galdeano, his teammate Isidro Nozal, and the two stars of the Postal Vuelta, Roberto Heras and Manuel Beltran. So I'm not sure. They have one good day, one bad day, and it seems like today they're a little bit off, both Gonzalez and Frigo a little bit further down. They need big chunks of time over these two men. They're already 4 and 5 minutes behind. They need to be taking massive time out of them each check along the way, and they're actually losing more time on a stage that should be their specialty. So you got to hand it to these two men right now, Nozal and Igor Gonzalez de Galdeano, setting great times Once is going away, and Manolo Sáenz, their director sportif, has said time and time again, we need to end our sponsorship on a high note, and these two riders are not disappointing so far.
Well, strangely enough, on the rest day, Manolo Sáenz was actually reported as being in Madrid having lunch with some people who were possibly seen as new sponsors for the whole structure of this team, and that would be a great thing to do to keep this team together for the next few years. And there's a lot of rumours in the mill also about the possibility of a company coming in to take over ibernesto.com for next season.
Well, Eroski, the co-sponsor of the Once team, has said that they would love to continue. They have the money already committed to the sponsorship, but only as a co-sponsor. So Manolo Sáenz's job is very hard, but it's only half as hard as it might be for some of the other directors sportivos. He needs a co-sponsor for the Eroski supermarket chain that's already a co-sponsor of the Once squad.
Well, it certainly would be great if Once were to continue in some form or other under the command of Manolo Sáenz next year, because it's a very successful team. There's no doubt about that. Now, this will be Rasmussen coming up here towards the check, and let's see how he's getting on, because he'd lost over 1 minute and 6 seconds to the best time at the first check of the day at 14 kilometres. Mola was still the quickest here, and he's now conceding 2 minutes 16, so he's also finding the course a little bit tough today. This is González de Galdeano. They seem at this moment in this second quarter of the race to not be pulling away quite so quickly. Let's have a look at 41 here then. González at Santos is fifth. Leipheimer, no new names for us there at the moment. Miller at the 41 kilometres, still the fastest time at 47.43. Mola would begin to slow here, and in fact would finish only with the fourth best time, and he got down to the line.
Rasmussen has dropped one place there in his overall classification to Dario Frigo, but I did an awful lot of calculations this morning on how much time Frigo and Aitor González were going to take back on Beltran and Heras, and for the moment that organisation that I put into place seems to be going right out the window, because the two US postal riders are, for the moment, as we look at this individual time trial, outperforming those two specialists. They might have taken a bit of a psychological kicking as well yesterday, Bob, because they wouldn't have expected to lose over a minute on a flat stage like that, especially riders of their build, because they're the kind of guys who are able to fight and get themselves to a place in a front echelon like that, and losing that in a very short distance on a flat stage, they may well have not been able to get their minds in gear for this individual test this afternoon.
A crushing blow to the morale and the psyche of a rider when on a flat stage designed for the sprinters to have a chance to win, that you lose over a minute on GC. Here's Francisco Mancebo coming through the 27-kilometer check. He's a long ways down.
Yeah, but Bob, just look down the road there. You could actually see the car of the man who started behind him, and that was Roberto Heras. So Heras is doing a pretty good ride right now, because he's got Mancebo in his sights, and there's the time check. You can see Roberto Heras, I think today, is doing the individual time trial of his life. He is not good at this kind of discipline, but today he knows he's got to do something very special to keep right up in the overall classification. He's taken a minute back on Mancebo, who started 2 minutes ahead of him on the road here this afternoon, and he's rivaling the top times.
He's conceding at the last check 26 seconds to Nozal, but on everybody else he is very much on a par here. This is an exceptional ride by Roberto Heras, doing it on the flat, of course, with his known ability on the mountaintop still to come. He could yet be a top three finish, and he knows it. This will be a most interesting time here, because he's about 1.5 minutes he's taken out of Mancebo. He's closing in just about 30 seconds or so, and he'll be up on him, because they started at 2 minute gaps. Here we go. As he hits the line, it's going to be fifth best time at this point. 31.47, conceding 52 seconds at this point to Klaus Mola. So the race continues on. 27 kilometres done for Roberto Heras. One of a number of surprises today. The other one, of course, the race leader is on course to win again. We'll take a break. Welcome back as we continue to look at González de Galdeano next to arrive now at 27 kilometres. Manuel Beltran has gone through with a reasonable time of 32.21, because he is very close to Frigo's time, but this rider is definitely taking time out of Beltran, and on this long straight the 2 minute gap can be quite clearly seen between the riders. That's a great incentive, you know, for Nozal.
It certainly is. In fact, you can see Nozal in the distance down there. There's a yellow car. The second Once team car is following the last man to start. Igor Gonzalez de Galdiano, not for the moment rivaling the 2 times at the top of the leaderboard, the times of Mola and Miller, but still he is rivaling the best times. And do you know what impresses me the most is Roberto Heras is only a few seconds behind Igor Gonzalez de Galdiano, who goes through there with the 5th best time at this point.
And a full minute quicker than Dario Frigo at that point too, which is a very interesting marker, I think. But I think we're all going to take a back seat in this race when the next man comes through, because he's the man in the golden jersey. Now don't forget, if you miss any of our coverage of the Tour of Spain, then you can always catch up with everything what happens in cycling as well with our special programme, OLN Summer Sports Zone, which will feature highlights of news, results, domestic and international cycling and mountain biking, of course. Check it all out every Thursday, 9 p.m. Eastern and Pacific. Now, waiting for the big check here. Nozal was just 5 seconds off being #1 on the leaderboard at the last check. Has he improved on that? I've got a feeling he might well have improved on that now, because Miller was going slightly quicker. Mola was slowing down. Mola has the best time here of 30.55. Gonzalez de Galdiano has gone through 31.32, a minute quicker than Frigo. And this man, clearly the best of the men who are looking for a high finish in Madrid. Has he confirmed it? Look at this. He's coming through now. This man has found his time trialing legs as well. He's going to be just on the same time as Mola. 30.55.3. They say he's quicker.
Well, it's exactly the same time, only separated by tenths or even thousandths of a second. This man is certainly been the huge surprise of the Vuelta a Espana here right now, and I have to say they've put him on a very special machine here this afternoon, Bob, because it's emblazoned with gold finished equipment, and that's probably a lot to do with the fact that he's wearing the golden jersey. There's confirmation at 27 kilometers covered. Isidro Nozal and Klaus Mola exactly the same time. 4 seconds ahead of David Miller. Bert Grapch in 4th position there, 9 seconds in arrears, and Sergei Ivanov down there in 5th place. But this is turning out to be rather a splendid individual time trial, and I'm very impressed with Roberto Heras there, Phil, in 7th place.
Well, don't be impressed with Aitor Gonzalez, because he has now conceded in 27 kilometres, 1 minute and 50 seconds to this rider here. So there's no way now that Aitor Gonzalez is looking to repeat his victory in this year's Vuelta a España. This man, though, is looking for his first win. He's going a long way to getting it today. We'll take a break. And welcome back. Here we are looking now at Roberto Heras on the individual time trial around Albacete. And Roberto is just about 6 minutes away from going through the check at 41 kilometres. This is where David Miller was top man. We went through in 47.43. Miller's riding time at the moment is just over 41 minutes, and he is doing a great ride by his own standards, but Isidro Nozal is tearing the road apart.
Well, he really is. He is a huge revelation this year. The men who are really letting down the side, I have to say, are not Alessandro Bertacchi, but his teammates, Aitor Gonzalez and Dario Frigo, because those two men, I thought today, would be trying to put themselves back up to the top end of the overall classification. It must have been an indication yesterday, because to miss out on that large group that got away in the crosswinds, and for the two of them not to be there, they must have already been in a serious bit of bother, because you shouldn't have two big leaders miss a move like that. And I'm sure Giancarlo Ferretti, Bob, last night was not very happy at all.
A bit of a tongue lashing perhaps coming into the already battered morale of both Frigo and Aitor Gonzalez, our defending Vuelta champion. He's had an absolutely disastrous season so far, and if he doesn't start hustling to the finish line, it's going to continue. He showed good signs of form on the climb up to Andorra, a long, hard 25-kilometer finishing climb the last day in the Pyrenees, but that form hasn't been able to carry through. We thought that that was an indication that he was starting to improve and that he would do a very good time trial. The way he won the last three last year was absolutely unbelievable, but he's not been able to replicate that.
Here comes Marcus Serrano himself, a very high standard time trialist, and he's coming up with a reasonable time here. But you know, also talking about Gonzalez and Frigo yesterday, they had a very hard chase. They had to work hard to limit their losses, and I think they're paying the price in the time trial today, where it's the race of truth. Serrano coming in anyway, and it looks like just about a top 10 finish for him. There's Floyd Landis still hanging on to 7th place. That's a great result for Floyd if it stands. 1:4:40. He might just slip away 1 or 2 places before we get to the line, but he was 30th in the individual time trial a few days ago, or over a week ago now, isn't it? So he is showing a steady increase in his form. Serrano coming up, and he might just get, I don't think he'll make top 10 now. Well, oh yes, he should do, because Jose Enrique Gutierrez is there in 10th place, and now in 9th is Serrano.
Well, I'll tell you what, just expanding on that thought of yours, the fact that they had to chase very hard yesterday. Well, don't think that Roberto Heras and Manuel Beltran didn't ride very hard in that front group as well, because they knew they had a big chance to open up the time gaps between themselves and those two specialists. And at that last time check at 27 kilometers, Aitor Gonzalez was only 36th, while Dario Frigo was 25th. But this man is a good reference as an individual time trialist, represented Spain at the Olympic Games in Sydney. He's looking at a top 5, top 6 finish here right now, and he's trying to stay inside the time of Levi Leipheimer, who is improving as we get towards the end of the Vuelta a España.
5th at all of the checks. I think he's going to confirm 5th place on the line for the former champion of the time trial of Spain, that is. And here he comes, Santos Gonzalez, producing a nice kick, and nice to see him in the race, because this is the team that may not have been here if Cipollini decided not to ride in the team, so be it just for the team time trial. 5th place at the moment, 1:4 there for him, back out on the course. This man is looking rather set to break a 1-2 barrier at the moment, and he might be the only man to do it if he can maintain this place.
Well, it's all going to be down up to the last 15 kilometres, because as we said, the wind this afternoon is basically a southeasterly wind, a complete change in wind direction as we get down towards the bottom of the Spanish Peninsula, and they've got a tailwind over the first half of the course and then a very difficult headwind on their way back into Albacete for the finishing time. But look at the time gap now between Nozal and his can I call him the leader of Once, Bob, Igor Gonzalez de Galdiano, because he's in fact beating his team captain and leader by 37 seconds. This is certainly the birth of a new star of Spanish cycling.
Definitely. De Galdiano wearing 21 as team leader. We can say he is most definitely the captain of the team, but I think it's Nozal now that has deserved, so far, as long as he hasn't overcooked this time trial, deserved the attention from the Once team, and they should now not have him come back for bottles, not have him ever set any pace at all in the mountains for De Galdiano, but have it the other way around. Let's let Igor Gonzalez de Galdiano and the other Once riders take care of Nozal for a little bit. As long as this gap continues, he's brought it down 36 seconds from the 2 minutes at the start. It wouldn't surprise me if he has a powerful kick to the end. Once this road turns into the headwind, it's a big difference. Roberto Heras, I think, has really benefited from the big tailwind out on the first part of the course, but it's all down to the second half of the race. Klaus Moeller 7 seconds ahead of David Miller at the 27 kilometer time check, but Miller way ahead of Klaus Moeller at the finish line. So I think Miller keeping a lot in reserve for the very difficult final kilometers of this time trial. We'll see if De Galdiano, who looked very cool on the first part of the race, didn't look like he was straining at all, if he hasn't himself left some in reserve for the final kick to the line. And if Nozal has gone out too hard, too quickly, even though he's building his time, things might start to reverse out on the road. Nozal doing a great job. Once needs to start paying very close attention to his chances.
Also a difference in these two riders' seasons as well, because Igor Gonzalez de Galdiano coming back after injury, a very nasty crash in the Tour of Germany. He wasn't able to take part in the Tour de France for various reasons. But Nozal, in the back of his mind, Bob, has got the fact that he rode the Tour de France this year. Okay, he rode in a supporting position for riders like Yoshiba Belocchi, but at the end of the day, he still has that power in his legs that you get from riding a 3-week stage race. And it's an amazing thing that a lot of physiologists cannot understand why it happens, but riding a bike for 3 weeks like this, you certainly build a latent strength which is always there in your body, even when you're under pressure.
Well, I can tell you that Frigo has gone through at 41 kilometres, still conceding now almost 3 minutes to David Miller, and we can expect it to be 3 minutes when Nozal gets there. Aitor Gonzalez has gone through conceding 3 minutes 17. He could be looking at least 3.5 minutes. So those two today are seeing any dreams they had of a podium finish going through the window, I think. Let's have a look at 41 kilometres now. There's Aitor, I was just telling you about that. 36th place only for him at 3:17. That is not a good report from the course there for a man who should be right up on the leaderboard. Scarponi, he has a good position in the overall classification with Santos Gonzalez, and he's going to need a good time to stay up there. This should be good enough to keep him in a nice high in the top 20 at least in the race itself. It certainly will do that. 1:5:48 for him, but a 1:5 only getting you 19th place now. A lot of riders are slotting in, split only by fractions of a second. It'll be interesting now. We're not far away from seeing Heras arrive at that check at 41 kilometres. We've never actually seen the bridge. It's a bit of a mythical point. We only know when they've got there when they tell us on the computer. But I think for the big boys you might get to see it.
Well, I hope so, but this man is doing a great sterling performance in the individual time trial here. Obviously the two men at the top of the leaderboard in first and second place, Nozal and Igor Gonzalez de Galdeano, doing very good rides themselves, but this is the kind of discipline that they are specialists at. This man here is riding a race that he's not used to riding and performing well in, but he realizes today is important to keep him in with a chance of winning this bike race. We get an indication now of just how far he has to go to the finishing line, and it's 12 kilometres, and that's around about 7 miles.
So that is the 41 kilometre check, but obviously our timing equipment doesn't have a camera there to tell us exactly what he's done. We'll find out as it comes to us on the computer, but there's no doubt Roberto Heras is doing enough today to at least stay in the contest, whereas a few riders aren't. He's fifth fastest at 41 kilometres 1:01. Looking as the sun goes high in the sky here around Albacete, and the golden jersey reflecting a great ride at the moment. Isidro Nozal waiting now for his time at 41 kilometres. Roberto Heras is through with the fifth best time, but the most important time at the moment. And there's the situation now. Valverde is through in 8th and completing the list. Beltran has just gone through in 9th, a minute 42 off Miller. But of course he's not that far off. He's just a little less than a minute off his teammate Heras. There's no doubt at this point Heras reclaiming the leadership though of the US Postal team.
Coming inside of 9 kilometres to go right now. The two US Postal riders were separated by 25 seconds at the start of the day. But we're actually now getting to the very difficult part of the course. Roberto Heras is absolutely superb here this afternoon. Really showing the mettle of a true champion. He's had a couple of hard days throughout this Vuelta a Espana here, but right now he's trying to get himself back in with a chance. He knows the day after tomorrow he has got a very good chance of putting time between himself and Igor Gonzalez de Galdeano and of course Isidro Nozal. But look at that, at the 41 kilometre check, Igor Gonzalez de Galdeano has gone through in 5th place in 38 seconds in arrears of David Miller's time, ahead of Roberto Heras. That's not a great surprise, but I think the time difference between the two, Bob, for me is a big surprise.
Yes, absolutely. De Galdeano starting to pull himself back into this bike race. He needs some time on Roberto Heras. When we think about the slopes of the Pandera climb coming up, it's incredibly steep. It's a long climb. Heras won the stage last year and got a lot of time on his rivals. He'd love to do that again. And here's the overall standings after stage 12.
And looking as though Nozal is now pulling away. It'll be over 2 minutes clear of his team captain by the end of this race. And in 48 hours we have the big climb of the Pandera, which is a very, very tough climb, and the Sierra Nevada mountain finish the day after that. Still a lot of racing to come. We have a rest day on Monday, of course, and then it's flat out for Madrid. Some tough days lie ahead. 41 kilometres, this is the situation. Nozal now at 47.36 is 7 seconds quicker than David Miller, and the only man on top of the leaderboard who is now on top of this leaderboard as well. He's winning the Tour.
It really is amazing. It's turning out right now to be a situation where Once have the position where they can only lose this Tour by the mistakes or a literal implosion within the team, because this man is extending his lead over riders like Roberto Heras and Manuel Beltran, the big climbers, but he's also extending his lead over Igor Gonzalez de Galdeano, and I wonder if he'll be able to handle the big climbs coming up over the next few days, the climbs up to the Pandera and the climbs up to Sierra Nevada, because the important thing about winning a 3-week stage race is dosing your efforts. And I've always questioned Once since the very first few days of racing Bob, in the fact that they've used so much energy out on the open road. While the riders from US Postal have sat in the pack, they've allowed Once to control the pacemaking. The Once riders have been always in the first positions, and at the end of the day there is a bill to pay somewhere along the road in a 3-week stage race. And we could see a literal explosion of Isidro Nozal. I hope that doesn't happen, because today he's showing that he really is a true champion, which is amazing for a rider who before the start of this bike race had only ever had one professional victory.
Well, he's putting it down to the fact he's lost so much weight this year because of his training regime under Manolo Science. They've sorted him out. He has a penchant for the big food, but the gap is opening. If they keep this up, Nozal is going to tickle to get inside 62 minutes for the distance, while it looks as though Igor Gonzalez de Galdeano will be a mid-63-minute ride, and then that really is going to open up the gaps.
Dead even with Moeller at the last time check Nozal was, and just a couple of seconds ahead of David Miller. David Miller reversed his position with Moeller, put 11 seconds more than his disadvantage of 4 seconds into Moeller. Here comes the finish of, it seems like, Alejandro Valverde, our erstwhile leader of the combination jersey. He's on the Kelme team, but he's wearing that blue jersey. But Nozal blowing away both Moeller and Miller at the very last time check, having a great day out on the roads today, Isidro Nozal. Here comes Valverde with a very solid time for this young, gifted climber from the Kelme team.
Might just break the top 10 here. He's been going through the checkpoints with around about the 10th best time. And if he's held his speed all the way to the line, this is a good ride by Alejandro Valverde. Remember, it'll be points for that blue jersey because he wants to keep high up in the overall classification in the combine competition. And he looks as though he might just about better the top 10 here if he can hold his sprint to the line. He's going to drop behind Floyd Landis. He's got to get inside Alberto Martinez. He might just about do that. He's good. And 9th place finish for the moment for Valverde, 1:4:47. Good solid ride.
Good solid rider for the future as well, just 23 years of age in his second year as a professional bike rider, and this looks right now as if we're looking to the shadow coming up now of this man. Really surprising to see that Aitor Gonzalez, Phil, was caught and passed by Valverde, who started behind him, so he's certainly plummeted down the overall classification.
Well, I think when you're a top time trialist and you know your legs aren't working and it's not your year, and then he sat up. He hasn't got the commitment. He knew as soon after he would have started today whether he was going good or bad, and clearly Aitor Gonzalez has not seen any improvement on his year in the long term. This is not the world or top time trialist who won both of the time trials last year. That looks to be heading this time towards Nozal having that privilege, or the man who won the time trial stage of the Giro d'Italia. Aitor Gonzalez slipping into the anonymity of the heart of the field today as he comes up to the line, and clearly a long time ago gave up his effort. 1:7:51 and 58 at the moment. He'll be outside the top 60 by the time we end the day.
Well, Bob, when you're a top time trialist like Aitor Gonzalez and you get caught for 2 minutes by somebody else, that really is a serious blow to the morale, especially when you get caught by a young 23-year-old who is not renowned yet as an individual time trialist. But this kid, we're going to talk about him for quite a few months to come, because whether or not Team Once do continue, this man will be the new man of Spanish cycling, because this is a fine performance once again. He doesn't look to be under any stress at all, does he, Bob? Look at the way his body is right over the front end of those handlebars. It's not moving at all. That's a sign that he's still generating an awful lot of power.
He's doing a great ride. He looks very, very smooth. A lot of power. He's going very fast on the road. It's a little bit deceiving. De Galdeano there, his teammate, and the gap keeps going up. He'll be able to see him on the distance, just on the horizon. He's on 1 minute behind. He started 2 minutes behind. He's going to close about a minute by the finish, I would imagine. They have 6 or 7 kilometers to go for De Galdeano, and he is struggling to the finish line, and his teammate Nozal is really flying there. It gives you such a charge to morale when you can see one of the best time trials in the world just up the road, and you continue to chip away and close the gap. Nozal on fire. Another inspired ride by this young revelation from the Once team of Spanish cycling.
The banner up the road there is 5 kilometres from the finish for Igor Gonzalez de Galdeano. We're waiting at the finish line for the arrival of Dario Frigo, but I would say there's no doubt now that Nozal is going to pull out more than a minute off his team captain. Then who's going to be the man in charge in this year's Vuelta Espana? More when we come back after the break. And welcome back, just in time to see the arrival of Dario Frigo and the two Americans. Levi Leipheimer still 6th and Floyd Landers holding a highly respectable 8th place finish. And Dario Frigo, one or two of us, tipped this man to win yesterday. It looks as though he's let us all down because he too has suffered after that long chase in the crosswinds yesterday when he lost more than a minute. And he's losing the Tour of Spain here right now, I think, because he's just about going to creep into the top 35 riders as he comes up to the line. So the man who really should have been in the top 6 at this stage of the day is just about coming in with a 1 hour 6 minute ride, puts him in 32nd place, and he'll go further down than that.
I'll tell you what, that's completely blown away my predictions, Phil, as Francisco Mancebo comes up to the line right now. Pretty reasonable time by him as well, and right on his tail, just round the corner there, I caught a glimpse of Roberto Heras. My predictions for the day were Dario Frigo and, of course, Aitor Gonzalez, and they certainly have let the side down this afternoon. But there, further down the road, is Roberto Heras, for me, riding the time trial of his career, Bob.
Absolutely. This is the time trial of Roberto Heras' life. He's just down on the finishing straightaway as Mancebo comes to the line. Decent time for Mancebo, 48.8 kilometer average. That is pretty darn fast on a day that's so windy. You can see down the course a little bit, Roberto Heras doing his final sprint for the line. He's still in 5th place. That's a great ride by the pure climber from the Postal team.
Comes in, clipping the barriers there. He's very, very pleased, I would suspect, with that ride. 50.1 kilometres now, nearly 32 miles an hour. Concedes a minute 32 to David Miller, but that's not his target. It'll be slightly more than that when this rider gets in, though, because the indications are now he's a minute and 5 seconds ahead of Gonzalez de Galdeano, and he can't have much more than about 3 minutes to go.
Well, that's an incredible performance. That'll move him up into 3rd place in the overall classification. But let's not forget about this young man. He's actually not yet 26 years of age. He turns 26 next month. He's been a professional since 1999. He's always ridden for Team Once. He's always ridden in the shadow of many other great stars on that team. But I think over the last couple of days, he's turned out to be the star of the show himself. And his time trialing ability really has put him to the top of the ladder. But right now, I think he's really starting to turn that body of his inside out, Bob.
He looked like he was going very hard there. He wants this stage. He wants to consolidate his race leadership on his Once team. His teammate is in 2nd place on GC, and they've sort of been dosing out their efforts based on the behalf of both of the team leaders. I think now all of their resources can be thrown at this man. Isidro Nozal doing the race of his life. This is a great result. He is hauling. He is pouring on the coals now and steaming towards the finish line. What a great ride by this young athlete on the Once team.
Just look how fast that countryside is flashing by that rider. And Gonzalez de Galdeano, there's 3 riders still to finish. Beltran, we haven't seen too much of him, but he's still in front of Gonzalez de Galdeano. And then comes this rider, and then the last man on the road. Indications are, though, that Nozal is going to win his 2nd time trial of the Vuelta Espana. And I think if you look at the record books, you don't win 2 time trials in a stage race and lose the overall classification at the end. Well, we'll wait and see for that one. But here comes Beltran now, slipping away again. But again, a very, very good performance from Manuel Beltran. Not quite of the standard he set himself when he rode so well in the first time trial, but indicating now, yes, he's the number 2 man on the team for sure now, but he's still very, very strong. Heras will welcome his help in the high mountain finishes which come in the next 3 days. So Beltran heading up towards the line, and it won't be too far back, I don't think, before we see Gonzalez de Galdeano, because I reckon he's on a 1 hour 3 minute ride, and Beltran coming in at 1:04. Then Gonzalez de Galdeano can't be that far behind.
Well, these 2 riders from US Postal were separated by 25 seconds, and that still, this ride by Beltran keeps them in a very good tactical situation going into the big mountain stages to come, because they can always launch a man into a breakaway situation. That's a good ride by Beltran as he comes up to the line and stops the clock for the 9th best time, an hour and 4 minutes 39 seconds.
But right in the home straight now, he's closed right in on him. Igor Gonzalez de Galdeano is now heading up to the line. He might just be a short 1 hour 3 minute ride. He will be all of that now as he comes in, and the man who's going to really set that clock on fire is still to finish now, because he's about less than a minute behind his team captain as Gonzalez de Galdeano comes home. He's hanging on here, a 5th place finish at the moment. It just shows you the quality of Heras's ride, because we expect a good ride from Galdeano. He gets the better of Roberto Heras, but only just. He looks over his shoulder, perhaps not at the clock, perhaps to see where Isidro Nozal is, where he's about 40 seconds behind him, and here he comes. He could be the only man today to get inside that 1:02 barrier. It'll be a tough call, but he'll be right on the top of the minute, and there's no doubt now that Nozal has won his 2nd time trial, and surely now has really laid the foundation for his final victory in Madrid a week on Sunday. At last now, when he's been riding in the partnership of his team captain, surely now Nozal is going to believe in himself. He might just yet beat that 1:02 ride. No, he won't. He'll go just outside, but one thing's for sure, he's won his 2nd time trial. 1:02.03. Now surely, Bob, he's going to go on and win this Tour.
That's an unbelievable ride by Isidro Nozal. You could just see it in his pedaling motion, so smooth, so powerful. Now the melee at the finish line, he is wounded. In the final kilometers, he went flat out into a big headwind. That's a great ride by Nozal, and let's see if he can keep on doing the efforts that are steady in the mountains to get all the way to Madrid in that golden jersey. What a ride by the young man from the Once team.
Well, he needs a little bit of a warm down from that huge effort. What a huge effort he's made there, Paul, now. But in a few minutes' time, when he recovers and all the journalists start telling him his time gains, he's going to feel a very happy man.
He certainly will. He will be increasing his time advantage over everybody else in this bike race, and it really is a remarkable performance. He really pushed himself deep over those last few kilometres, and I tell you what, I've been a bike rider myself, as so has Bob, and I really find it hard to understand how much pain a man must put his body through to ride an individual time trial like that, because I know for myself, I never got close to the top 50 in an individual time trial in the Grand Tours, and it's Bob, almost impossible to comprehend the pain that these guys must have to push themselves through.
It was a great ride by Nozal. You can see the suffering on his face there. Nobody is immune to it. If you want to win a big bike race, you have to go through hell. Isidro Nozal, in a purgatory out on the roads of the Vuelta a Espana today, is the ganador, the winner of the stage. 1 hour, 2 minutes, 3 seconds, just about 13 seconds faster than perhaps the best time trialist in the world, David Miller.
Well, Miller was looking for the win this afternoon. He wants to try and get an indicator as to whether or not he can be the winner of the World Championships in the individual time trial as we get the clasificación de l'etapa. Nozal 13 seconds ahead of David Miller, 40 seconds ahead of Sergei Ivanov. Bert Grabscher doing a very good ride there for Team Phonak, 44 seconds in arrears, and a pretty impressive ride by Klaus Moeller, moving himself up a long way in the overall classification with a 5th place finish there. But I think looking a little bit further down, the ride of the day to me was 7th place by Roberto Heras, 1:45 down, but keeping himself up at the top and also moving himself up 1 place in the overall classification to 3rd place, and that, as you can see, ahead of a time trial specialist like Santos Gonzalez and Levi Leipheimer.
Super ride too by Floyd Landis in 12th place, an even better ride by Levi Leipheimer, who's showing now this Tour is doing him the world of good as he comes back into the sport after that nasty crash on the 2nd day of the Tour de France. He's really finding himself now, and let's hope that next year he'll once again be a big challenger in these stage races, because he's had a 3rd place, best American finisher ever in the Tour of Spain a couple of years ago. No doubt who the king of the pile is, though. Again, it's Isidro Nozal. He's 3:03 ahead of his teammate now, 5:15 over Heras. We'll be back in a moment. And welcome back, Chances Hall, to get our breath back now, because that was a tremendous time trial. It's confirmed Nozal as the real leader of this Tour, if there was any doubt. And I think now we can have a look at the overall classification, at least the top 5. Nozal now leading Gonzalez de Galdeano by over 3 minutes. Roberto Heras, his great ride, rewarding him with a rise into 3rd place. All Spanish cyclists now completing the top 5. Beltran holding his top 4 position with his ride, and Francisco Mancebo, he completes the top 5. And the ride, by the way, by Aitor Gonzalez, as you can now see, has taken him outside of the top 10. In fact, he's 11th. Valverde also slipped down. Here we are. He gets bigger every day, Bob, when he stretches those trophies, doesn't he?
Absolutely.
It's his
very
second
happy
stage win.
Very happy. You can feel it. He went through a lot. He suffered like crazy. That is a huge trophy, and he got it all the way over his head, no problem at all. So obviously very strong, as well as a good
for
time
the
place.
sky there, isn't he? That big rib cage he's got, gulping in all of that air. But again, you see, he's proved just how hard this man tries in a race.
He is very pleased. This is a great moment for Isidro Nozal. He earned this, and now Once must definitely put all of their resources into defending his lead. It was an incredible ride. Replay of the finish. Look at the suffering on his face, but that is turned into all smiles now on the podium.
Well, I'll tell you what, it's amazing how quickly some of these guys can actually recover, but it was this moment here, just as the soigneur, the team helper, comes up alongside and tried to hold him up. He was almost on the point of collapsing off his bike. Some of the other classifications, well, there's no change at all this afternoon because Felix Cardenas, he didn't have to worry about the vantage points this afternoon. He doesn't even have to worry about them until the day after tomorrow.
That's right, Gemma. Of course, he goes to Pandera. What do you think's going to happen on Pandera, Bob?
I think the Postal's going to attack for all they're worth and watch for Roberto Heras, who did a scintillating time trial, considering he's a pure climber. This is a very steep hill day after tomorrow. Wait for Heras to light up the field on Sunday.
All right, and you know, although González de Galliano is still there in second place, he doesn't exhort that great feeling he's going to stay there, does he?
It's a very tenuous hold he has on second place, and if Roberto Heras is inching a little bit closer to him with that great ride there. He lost a little bit of time today, Galdiano, on the stage, but he can get lots of time on Sunday's stage.
Let's have a look at the combine. Nozal is the leader here, but the jersey is on loan to Alejandro Valverde, who again stays up there, just 1 point behind him. The most consistent riders in all of the classifications, this is. Rasmussen today is third here, but he'd be very disappointed with his performance. He's dropped away a little bit on the leaderboard, while Luis Perez has come up with a very good ride today and was going to have his finest ever stage race finish if he keeps up the good work. There's a little view of the crowd. We don't get the big, huge crowds out on these time trial courses that we see on the Tour de France, but they do hang around the finish. And again, they're going to stay there for a long time today, as now here he comes again for the leader's jersey in the blue jersey competition. Then he'll hand it over to Valverde to wear again tomorrow. But for the moment, Nozal is the man who gets all of the glory. And another blue jersey, of course, very shortly, Paul, is going to get his 10th golden jersey.
He certainly is, and as Bob said a little earlier on, I think right now Team Once have just got to look at this man as the sole leader, because I have a feeling as well that Igor González de Galdiano is tenuously holding on to second place in the overall classification there. I can see a big explosion on the horizon for him. He's only just 2 minutes and 10 seconds ahead of Roberto Heras. 2 big mountaintop finishes to come, a mountain time trial as well, and on top of that, just towards the end, there's a very difficult first category finish on one of the stages just in the outskirts of Madrid. So Roberto Heras will certainly be looking to close in at the top end of the overall classification. Frigo just holding on there to a top 10 place, dropping down from 7th to 9th, and I really would be interesting to see what it says in the newspapers tomorrow about the performances or the non-performances of those 2 riders from Fassa Bortolo.
They're probably going to rely very heavily on Tom Danielson next year when he comes across there, Bob, the American rider who's joining the team. He's a young talent, isn't he?
A real, pure, huge talent. Tommy Danielson has signed for the Fassa Bortolo team. They have one of the best directors in the business, as Isidro Nozal gets his 10th golden jersey of this Vuelta a España.
Well, when it was stage 6 and we were at Zaragoza, we said then that we didn't expect this man to be still the leader. He won the time trial there on the 6th day of the Tour. Now here we are, stage 13. He's won the time trial again, and he's very much the leader of the Tour now, and is convincing us all that he's going to carry this jersey all of the way to Madrid. He's still got some tough days ahead of him. He's got the mountain top finishes, the mountain time trial, hang on in the crosswinds, which he's had no difficulty in doing. And he doesn't ever speak about himself as being the leader of the team, never mind the leader of the Tour. But surely now Manolo Sainz is going to have to say, right, you've earned your stars, now we're all going to help you win this race, because I don't think they've got any choice, have they?
No choice at all, because he's actually defended his lead in the overall classification very well. And look at those time trial performances today, because Once have stretched out the lead over iBernesto.com to 10 minutes.
7-minute gain.
What is an unbelievable competition for the Spanish cyclists, and this battle between Once and Bernesto, Bob, has gone on for many, many years.
Bernesto closed the gap in the mountains, and now Once has really stretched it out here on the time trial. It's almost 11 minutes now between Once leading the team classification and Benesso in second place. Oddly enough, way ahead of the two Spanish teams that are going to carry on their sponsorship, even though Once and Benesso will lose theirs at the end of this year.
Looks like they're bringing them all out here now. These are the top two. Igor Gonzalez de Galdeano still smiling, saluting his younger man there who's beaten him again in a time trial. Remember, it was de Galdeano who held the jersey for quite a few days in last year's tour before victory went to Aitor Gonzalez. Remember him? Washed away today and outside of the top 10 now in the overall classification. And 10 places down the overall classification now is many, many minutes. That's the big thing, time.
Absolutely. Aitor Gonzalez slipping out of the top 10 on GC at the end of today's stage. A bit of a disaster for Fausto Bortolo. They'll be looking up to Tom Danielson in the years to come to get them higher up on GC. That's the real battle of cycling. Here's the classification for points. Eric Zabel, a pretty handy lead on Alessandro Pataki. And Nozal, look at that, third place. He's got two jerseys in hand and very close to another.
Well, unlike many of the other Grand Tours, in fact, there are exactly the same points on every stage of the Vuelta a España, whether it be a time trial stage or a mountain stage. And that's where these riders who do well in the mountains actually bring themselves up to rival the sprinters like Eric Zabel and Alessandro Pataki. That's a battle that will resume between the two top sprinters tomorrow when we go out to a slightly flatter stage. But then after that, it's all uphill and a very scary climb up to the summit of Pandera. Tomorrow, though, Albacete to Val de Penas, well, that's completely flat, and it's around about 102 miles of racing.
Well, I think it'll be a day for the sprinters for sure, but you can never be sure in this race, especially again if we pick up those crosswinds. Oscar Sevilla, by the way, who was born in Albacete, got a great cheer when he finished, but his time wasn't quite good enough. He finished the race in 31st overall. But like Levi Leipheimer, he's coming back in. I think the American boys had a good ride today, especially Floyd Landis.
He certainly did, and this is a great race to come and learn part of the trade, especially riding the 3-week Grand Tours. But George Hincapie also rode pretty well, and the rumour on the street is that George Hincapie will make a decision after the summit of Pandera as to whether or not he's going to stay in the race. I think it all depends on whether or not Roberto Heras gets closer to the top of the overall classification, because the important thing about winning a 3-week bike race is you need to have a complete team in the last week of racing. And Heras, I don't think, has given up just yet.
No, I'm quite sure. Well, I think we can... Bob, just very briefly, George Hincapie making a decision after the finish of Pandera. You'd have made it before the top, wouldn't you?
I think so. That would have been the convenient way, but Eras did such a great time trial today. And if it wasn't for George Hincapie on yesterday's stage when he blew the race apart in the crosswind, they would not have gotten that much time. So
very good.
Very,
and I think
necessary.
that's what hurt Aitor Gonzalez
Absolutely.
and Dario Frigo. They lost a lot of energy yesterday. I think we can have a look at the... well, just before we have a look at the stage result, Bob, just looking now at the FASA team, I mean, they've had terrific results all year with Pataki.
Oh, my goodness, unbelievable.
But they've banked an awful lot on Aitor Gonzalez. He's never delivered up.
One thing that you have to think about there is the passion and the real volatile nature of the Spanish teams. He was on Kelme last year. They have a total nutcase, Vicente Belda, as a team director. He's always screaming at the athletes. He criticizes them when they don't do well. He changed a whole different attitude to the team, a much calmer team. Maybe he hasn't found the passion for the sport that he had last year when he was on the Kelme team, and now he's totally lost the plot. He's a defending champion, and he's a lowly 11th place overall in this Vuelta.
There's probably a chance he'll move on again. Anyway, I think we can now have a look at the stage results and just remind ourselves this will make great reading for Isidro Nozal. It took him just 62 minutes to cover the longest time trial for more than 25 years in the Tour of Spain. David Miller beaten again by Nozal. He'd be very unhappy about that, but again, for the second time this tour, confirming he's a very good time trial rider. Sergei Ivanov lived with them throughout the day as well, like Miller did, and he held on to third place, as did Grabsch, and Klaus Moeller again doing a good ride. But I have to say that those riders didn't make any difference at all to the overall situation. Nozal, the leader of the race, doing what all great tour leaders do, and you win the stage when you're wearing the race leader's golden jersey. Just let's have a little look at the countdown here. He was hoping what happened would come true, and it took him 62 minutes.
62 minutes of purgatory in what we've always dubbed the race of truth, and it was very truthful today because it showed us who is the strongest man so far in the Vuelta a España. He knew he had to do something very special, but the ride that he put out on the 53.3 kilometre time trial here today has probably laid the foundations for victory for this man who before the start of the race was an unknown.
Well, there was never in any doubt from the moment he sat in that saddle. He built and built and built over just about everybody in the race. I thought he might have broken the 1:02 barrier. He faded just slightly inside that. Miller was then the target for the best time of the day. No problems. 1:2:03. So the Pacific Life general classification is changed, but the name at the top for the 10th day is the same. He leads now by 3:03. He's prizing the gaps open on his team captain, and Roberto Heras hovers around the same, but keeps closing up the overall classification. Heras, who loves the Vuelta a Espana, has got countless places at the finish of the race in the top 6, and now he's up into a podium finish again in 3rd. Beltran is 4th, and Francisco Mancebo hung on to 5th, but now he's over 7 minutes behind Isidro at Nozal. Nozal can look forward to the mountains now. So tomorrow will be a little bit of a respite. The riders get a chance of a flatter stage as we go down to Valdepeñas, and that reasonably flat undulations, no mountain competitions. Felix Cardenas only has to sit in the peloton to keep his lead in that competition, and of course they're then just a day away from the Pandera. Remember, it's the weekend, so we bring you same-day coverage rather than live, and the set time of 3 p.m. Eastern Time, so make sure you're around to see what happens on the long stage tomorrow. I should imagine, if I can say it, we should see a resumed battle between Eric Zabel and Alessandro Petacchi. The score at the moment is 3-2 in favour of Petacchi. Zabel, of course, will be very determined to try and level up the odds. Well, as we look at some of the beauty pictures of the Tour of Spain, and that's one of the things about this very beautiful country, is the route the riders take. And I know that many of you watch not for the scintillating commentary from Bob Roll and Paul Sherwen, but from the pretty pictures that emanate from the world of the professional cyclist. Enjoy the pictures with us. Still one more time trial to come, of course. That's a week tomorrow, and it's all uphill. But for the moment, for Paul Sherwen, Bob Roll, I'm Phil Liggett saying so long until tomorrow.